It is about to get wild in Columbus as the Minnesota Wild are in town to take on the Columbus Blue Jackets. We've got Seth Toupal of Locked On Wild here to talk all about his team, our team, and tonight's matchup coming up today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
So it's been a million years since these two teams have faced each other, and I thought, hey, let's talk to someone who knows way more about the Wild than I do. We spoke to Seth Toupal very briefly during the playoffs last season for the Blue Jackets Bandwagon Spectacular. Obviously, it didn't go super well for the Wild, but hey, Seth's great, so I thought we'd have him back on and talk about how the sky is falling in Minnesota. So how's it going, Seth?
It's going well. The Wilds hopefully had their get-right game after a stretch of hockey that led to me, using props to try to determine how we were going to get out of this. And, it is one game, but for it to look as good as it did gives me hope. And that's all we can ask for.
Yeah, I hear you. The Blue Jackets are doing this thing where they're really good for like 2 games and then terrible for 3 games and then good for 3 games. And I'm just like, can I just have a one consistent 10-game stretch? But let's start off talking about the Wild because, like I said, it's been about 700 years since these two teams played each other. So how is the Wild season going? Is it kind of as you expected, or has there been any surprises? What's going on with the Wild?
Well, I think first and foremost, the team started the season off so well, definitely leapfrogging what the expectations were coming into the season. The hope was that this team was going to be able to be competitive on a nightly basis. I don't know if anybody expected to, at one point, have both the Wild with the most amount of points in the Western Conference, and then to have Money Puck be like, hey, the Wild have the best odds to win the Stanley Cup, not get to win the Stanley Cup at one point. And, we didn't pull a Nashville or Carolina and hang that banner. But at the end of the day, it's just fun to have all that chatter around a team that has been so boring for so many years, to have flash, to have sizzle, to have style, to be able to go into Madison Square Garden and win and point at fans, at Rangers fans that were heckling the Wild and say, "Scoreboard, we beat you." It's been a fun season up until this last little road bump in which the Wild dealt with injuries. They dealt with defensive inconsistencies, dealt with some not so great goaltending, but got everybody back healthy and we're able to beat the Rangers once again. And so hopefully we can get back to some semblance of that team that started the season on such a run and avoid looking just, like a deer in headlights for the last 10 games before this. And they maybe aren't as good as the team that started the season, but they're definitely not as bad as the one that just completed that just awful 10-game stretch. They're somewhere neatly in between, but with Kirill Kaprizov, with Kevin Fiala, with guys like that, they are certainly in every game, which is way more than can be said for how they've been over the last few years.
Yeah, for sure. I know that feeling very well. Having covered first a mediocre Blue Jackets team and then a good but kind of boring Blue Jackets team. Right now, they might not be very good, but they are also playing pretty fun hockey. So you take it where you can get it sometime. But let's talk about that fun, that sizzle. You said Kirill Kaprizov, obviously a very stressful off season for you specifically with the Kaprizov contract drama, should we say? And then he had kind of a slowish start to the season, but since then he seems to have picked it up and is continuing kind of where he left off last season. So let's talk about Kaprizov. He's super fun, but what else do you get from a guy like Kaprizov?
A determined player, determined to have success, determined to beat you every time he's on the ice. The crazy thing right now is that his 71 points at this point in the season is already a top 5 season in Minnesota Wild history from a points perspective. And we are 55 games in. He seems like such a unicorn that this franchise has not seen since it came to be after the North Stars left. He has such a command of the puck. I don't remember at any point during Wild's franchise history that I've been following to where you had a guy who could just skate circles around an entire opponent's defensive zone, waiting for the opportunity that he wanted to pass the puck to a teammate, to go for the goal himself. He has an offensive skill set that is hard to fully match by anybody in the league. He is as gifted of a puck handler as you'll find. He has just this unbelievable way to beat you with these super confident passes and plays that he makes. I mean, between the legs, behind the back, any of those he certainly is capable of. But he plays with not only the flash but also the physicality as well. I think that's the biggest thing that he's done from last year to this year is there was an assumption that other teams are going to try to target him to wear him down and to try to kind of get at him mentally so he couldn't have that same impact that he had last year. And he has far and away exceeded what I thought he would be able to do in that category, to where if an opponent gets a hit on him, he'll fire back later in the game or the next play to just say, "Look, I'm out here, and if you're going to try to do that to me, I'll be happy to dish it back." But in terms of where he ranks amongst all-time Wild greats, he's already climbing the list, which is crazy. But if you think about it, he's everything that this franchise has never had in one player. And so for him to shatter the points record for a season this year, for him to do really anything, it's not a surprise because he's capable of anything you can think of at this point.
Now, you mentioned goaltending, which I feel like has been kind of a bugbear for the Wild basically forever. Like they had Devin Dubnyk, who was good for like 2 years, and then he died, and then Cam Talbot was really good last season. You've had okay goaltending. First of all, I would like to try and sell you Jonas Korpisalo for a first round pick. That is that is what I have been pitching to all of the teams that are buying. He hasn't been great this season. I'm not gonna lie. He's been injured a lot, but he is exactly the type of goalie that can stabilize things down the stretch. He obviously, made Toronto look like fools in the playoff bubble a couple of years ago, which we love when Toronto gets made a fool of. So that is my first pitch. But is goaltending something that you think, like, is this just a rough spot for Cam Talbot? Is this kind of indicative of a larger issue? Do you think the Wild go out and get a goaltender? I know that they've said publicly, "Oh, we're gonna go with these guys down the stretch," but also I know that sometimes general managers say things, and then general managers go and do the opposite of that thing.
It's a fascinating angle to look at, and I was at points during this stretch, I was pretty critical of the performance by both Capo and Cam Talbot. Um, some interesting tweaks that he made because, by all accounts, as far as I could boil it down, it seemed like Talbot, with his confidence being lost, was trying to guess way too much. He was trying to anticipate where the shot was going to come from next, as opposed to simply reacting to the puck um, in real time. And I made the adage to a golfer or to kickers where if things start to go wrong, you try to overcompensate instead of just doing the thing that you need to do. And, also it looks as though he was playing a little too deep in his own net at points to where he didn't really offer himself the freedom to use the entire crease. And in the game against the Rangers, he was noticeably more active and more, I think, more sure of himself. He did end up coming in relief of Capo Kakinen against the Stars and shut them out for the final 22 minutes of that game. So I kind of wondered if that was going to be a spring point for him to get that confidence back and be able to get back on track. And it certainly seemed, at least at this point, like it is. It doesn't surprise me that Bill Guerin is at least publicly saying that he's going to stick with this group because of how good this group was going early in the year. But it'll be interesting to see this next week for sure. If we start to see some struggles continue in the net for Talbot and for Capo Kakinen, then it wouldn't shock me at all if Guerin goes out and gets somebody. But he must have had something that somebody on the coaching staff was able to diagnose and say, this is a technical problem or, a confidence problem. It's not something that can't be fixed going forward. And a big key is going to be how he does against the Flyers. And then, of course, against the Blue Jackets. I would imagine Kappa will start that game. But either way, if these guys rebound, this is a very dangerous team. If not, Bill Guerin's going to do something about it. And, maybe they do end up taking a flyer on Mr. Korpisalo, somebody. It'll be interesting to see because Bill Guerin also is somebody that makes moves that we don't necessarily expect. And so it would not surprise me at all if he goes and does something that nobody was in on just because he likes that poker angle to this of trying to kind of be a good bluffer and read other general managers. So don't be surprised at all if he does something. Other than that, he probably will just kind of let this team ride out.
Yeah, Blue Jackets fans know very well about the general manager that likes to keep his cards close to his chest, shall we say. Jarmo Kekalainen is a man that kind of does what he wants and also doesn't really announce what he's doing until it's already done. In a minute, we are going to flip the script, and Seth is going to ask me about my horrible, terrible children. But first, I want to tell you about Built Bar, because you've heard it all by now, but I'm here to tell you Built Bar is incredible. It is delicious. It is nutritious. It is a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. And if you haven't tried it, you definitely should. But if you have tried it, but you haven't tried the Built Puffs, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. They are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They are fluffy, they are soft, they are delicious. They are covered in 100% real chocolate. There's incredible flavors: churro, coconut marshmallow, banana, cream pie. They're my favorite, and they're going to be yours as well. Built bars are low in calories, low in sugar, low in carbs, high in protein, high in fiber, high in deliciousness. And here's the best bit: if you go to built.com, you can use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Once again, that is promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, for 15% off at built.com.
All right. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have to thank everyone for making this their first listen of the day. This squadcast, Locked On crossover between Locked On Blue Jackets and Locked On Wild. You can find both podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, and also on YouTube. We are free and available if you are a first-time listener or a regular listener. We appreciate you.
Let's talk some Blue Jackets. Obviously, the season, as you alluded to, been a little bit of an up and down road for Columbus. Was that the assumption going into the year that it was going to be a Blue Jackets team that would, have some moments where they surprise people, but then have some moments where they came down to earth a little bit? What was coming into the year the expectation for how Columbus would do?
Generally speaking, I think the consensus was that Columbus was going to be an extremely bad team. You know, they were going to challenge for the lottery pick. They were going to challenge for the bottom of the league. And then they started the season. They went 7-3 in their first 10 games, and everyone was like, "What's going on? We didn't expect this. How do we react to this?" And then they've kind of come back down to earth a little bit, and like I said at the top of the episode, they've been inconsistent. Is probably the best word for them. I saw a stat earlier today. They haven't had a winning streak or a losing streak longer than 4 games this season. So it's very much they win 3, they lose 2, they win 3, they lose 1, they win 1, they lose 3. It's very up and down. They haven't really had a chance to get a proper win streak going or a proper losing streak. So it's not the end of the world. So I think my opinion going into this season was that the Blue Jackets are playing with house money. They are an incredibly young team. They've just entered what would be like the first year of what Kekalainen is calling a retool or a reset, not a full rebuild. Brand new first-time head coach. The John Tortorella experience is over. It's done with. You can see a difference in the team, but for me, I was like, right, any position above 8th in the Metro division that they finish is a win for me. And they're currently sitting at 5th. New York Islanders, who they played yesterday. They play in a bit. As of the time of recording this, we're actually recording before that game, but they could catch them, but I don't think that they will. The Islanders have also had their struggles, so I was kind of the opinion that the Blue Jackets were going to be better than everyone said. I didn't think they were going to be good, but I thought they were going to be better than everyone said, and so far they have kind of been middle of the pack, which is I will accept that for like I say, for an extremely young team with a lot of new faces. Like I didn't check. I would be willing to bet that the number of guys on the roster tonight versus the Wild that were on the roster the last time these two teams played, I'm going to put the over under at 8, and I'm going to take the under.
Oh my! Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's similar for the Wild in that they've had a lot of turnovers since Bill Guerin took over as well. I do have to ask about everybody's favorite Bond villain, Patrick Laine. One of the obviously one of the movers and shakers of this Blue Jackets team. 22 goals on the season. Who else have been some of the players that have helped kind of funnel this Blue Jackets offense? Who else are the players that Wild fans should be keeping an eye on to potentially score goals for Columbus?
Well, Oliver Bjorkstrand, who I have said for a long time is one of the more underrated goal scorers in this league. He's very quietly probably the best two-way forward that this team has. He's kind of streaky, a lot of goal scorers are. So he'll go a couple of games without scoring, and then he'll score goals in 4, and then he'll go quiet again. He's kind of heating up at the minute. He's got, I think, 4 goals in his last 5 games. He hit 20 goals on the season against Toronto on Tuesday. So he's one that the Wild definitely have to look out for. And because he's playing on the second line, obviously we've split him and Laine up. So we have kind of that double threat of who do you want to mark? Do you want your top line against Laine? Do you want your top line against Bjorkstrand? Another player, which if you told me at the start of the season that Boone Jenner was going to be leading this team in goals, I would have laughed in your face. Like I love Boone Jenner. I have always been a huge Boone Jenner fan. He had a 30-goal season in 2015 and then has never scored more than 18 goals since then. Put the C on his jersey and he's like a new player. I think probably a little bit of that helps that he's been centering Patrick Laine for most of the season, which, you could probably put me on a line with Patrick Laine and I would get a fair amount of points, but I don't know, some guys you put the captaincy on them and they struggle. We saw it with Nick Foligno, who again, I love Nick Foligno. I think he's one of the best, most beloved Blue Jackets ever. I would not be upset if his number went into the rafters after he retired. He struggled when he got the captaincy. He did not play very well. I think it was a combination of all of this added pressure and probably a little bit that he overperformed. He had a 71-point season, I think, the year before he took the C, and so I think he was never going to get that again. So I think he struggled. Boone Jenner has been the exact opposite. He has taken the captaincy and he has taken that first line center position, and he has also stolen all of Patrick Laine's power play goals. That helps. He has a lot of his goals have come from just deflecting Patrick Laine shots into the net, which is extremely funny because everyone was very upset that Patrick Laine wasn't scoring goals at the start of the season. And then I looked and was like, no, it's because he's been shooting the puck like a madman and Boone Jenner keeps getting in the way. So those are really the top three threats for the Blue Jackets at the minute, I would say.
Final one that I have before we flip to kind of looking at the matchup in this game. Obviously, you mentioned it is a retool, not necessarily a rebuild. So trade deadline strategy, sellers or neutral for Columbus this year?
God, I have been questioning this for basically since January. I can't tell because the Blue Jackets are in that weird place at the minute where they could make the playoffs. They probably won't. They are, I think, 11 points back of the second wildcard spot with 2 games in hand on Washington, who currently holds it. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could go on a hot streak and Washington could go on a cold streak and they could make the playoffs. I don't think it's super likely, but it could. And so you're like, do you sell and eliminate the possibility of making the playoffs? And then once you get into the playoffs, if you make the playoffs, you have a chance to win the Stanley Cup. As unrealistic as it is, we've seen 8th seeds drag themselves into the playoffs before and win the cup. Los Angeles in 2012, courtesy of Jonathan Quick playing like a madman. So if the Blue Jackets make the playoffs, then there's no telling what could happen. Tampa Bay a couple of years ago. Who saw that coming? Certainly not me. I wish I'd put money on it, but I did not. And so it's really tough to be like, well, yeah, we should sell. I'm trying, obviously, Jonas Korpisalo. I don't think we're going to get a first-round pick for him, but I'm trying to manifest that. I'm also trying to manifest Max Domi to Toronto for a first-round pick because I feel like Dubas is that. I feel like I could get that from Kyle Dubas. He loves the hometown guys. Max Domi is exactly the kind of trade deadline player that GMs love. So it's tough because my heart says, yeah, push for the playoffs. My brain says sell. I would not be surprised if Kekalainen does nothing. If he kind of quote unquote rent Korpisalo and Domi to himself for this playoff push. Because Kekalainen hates the trade deadline. He hates free agency. He loves the draft and he loves developing players himself through the organization. So I would be shocked if the Blue Jackets were buyers, but I wouldn't be surprised if they sell. My expectation is that they just kind of sit where they are. See if they can get into the playoffs with this group, then fine. But don't give up assets, and I don't think it makes sense to sell, especially with the goalie market is what it is. Like I could see them flipping Domi. I think Korpisalo will be here till the end of the season.
Okay, yeah, I'm in a similar spot with the Wild in that, if you're asking price for Claude Giroux as a first-round pick, an NHL-ready player, and a prospect, I am of the belief where even if the Wilds, continue to get back on track, I'm not super thrilled about paying that potential price. So, sometimes the best option you can have is just to ride with what you've got, and so we'll see, because obviously there are still a couple of weeks until, 11 days technically, as we're recording this, until the trade deadline. So it'll be interesting to see how everybody does, whether it be buying, selling, staying put, or whatever Ken Holland decides to do. It'll probably be the wrong choice. So we are going to dive a little further into this matchup in previewing tonight's game between the Wild and the Blue Jackets. We'll do that next, but first, it is that time of year again as college basketball's NCAA tournament is finally upon us. For all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games, the NHL, as well as we continue to push towards the Stanley Cup playoffs. So head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. You can find it all at BetOnline, where the game starts. Finishing today's crossover episode of Locked On Wild and Locked On Blue Jackets, and looking at the game here tonight, Jay, I always am concerned about the special teams. And, I was just looking it up, and both Columbus and the Wild are kind of in similar spots. They're not exactly in the middle in terms of power play and penalty kill. They are either above it or below it. Above it in the case of the power play, below it in the case of the penalty kill. Coming into this game, have the special teams for the Blue Jackets been trending in a positive direction, trending in a negative direction, or in the case of the Wild's penalty kill, trending towards making me just a wasteland of despair?
God, yeah, that's kind of how I felt about the special teams all season. It feels weird to say because the power play is currently sitting at 23rd in the league. Uh, it's been trending upwards for a while now, and I think because it was so goddamn awful for so long that now it's like I think we have power play goals in like 3 or 4 games straight, which is basically winning the Stanley Cup as far as I'm concerned. Like the power play has been god awful basically since Sam Gagner left in 2016. Like that was the last time the power play was good for this team. And I'm still not convinced that he didn't curse us on the way out the door, but that's besides the point. The surprise for me has been the penalty kill. The penalty kill has kind of been all over this season. It goes through stretches where they're like, "Oh man, they've killed off 28 straight penalties," and then they give up 3 power play goals in a game. It's the word of the day.
Yeah.
Inconsistency. Um, and it's very strange because for a long time the penalty kill was the Blue Jackets' big strength. They were, especially under John Tortorella, defense first on basically all aspects, and I think that's why the power play suffered. I've talked kind of at length about John Tortorella versus the power play, so I won't get into it in too much detail here. But I think basically players were so afraid of making mistakes that they just didn't do anything because they knew if they made a mistake, they were going to get stapled to the bench. That is not happening with Brad Larson. He's letting players make mistakes, which is good because I think we have 2 players over the age of 30 this season. And obviously Cole Sillinger is bringing that average way down because he's like 12. But
Yeah.
it's a very, very young team that is going to make mistakes, and Brad Larson is letting them make mistakes. Unfortunately, that means that sometimes the penalty kill is not very good and the power play is not very good. But I'd rather have them make the mistakes in this a year where we're not expecting a lot than to go all out and have, oh, you made a mistake on the power play, but even though you're 21 years old and this is your first time playing
Yeah.
PP1, like sit on the bench. No, he's not doing that, which is great.
The Wild found a new strategy to help kind of inflate their penalty kill. In the game against the New York Rangers, they did not commit a single penalty. So a penalty kill that came into that game, I think 14 for their last 26 in terms of killing penalties, which is
Yikes.
something. Yeah, it's not great. So, and of course I'm being a little facetious, but obviously it would be a great strategy to just not commit a penalty.
I would love that.
Every
That's my
game.
favorite strategy. The Blue Jackets love to do ice crime. And again, I think it's because Tortorella's not here anymore and they're not scared of the coach. Jacob Voracek is a big fan of doing ice crimes because I guess he's old and grumpy and he can do what he wants, which I'm fine with, but I don't appreciate that. I don't know, maybe he just thinks that they need to practice the penalty kill more, which I do appreciate because they probably do need to practice it more, but also if we could have just a little more shots on goal and a little less ice crime.
Yeah, it'd be great. So it'll be interesting because I did feel like the Wild were kind of getting a little too sucked in towards the net on the penalty kill, and then you're giving your opponent the opportunity to just do whatever they want with the puck. You're not being really aggressive, and so after a game in which they didn't have to worry about it at all, it'll be interesting to see if there's the Rangers game could be hopefully a building block for like everything. Power play looked good. Penalty kill did not become a problem. Goaltending looked good. And so hopefully all that is fixed. But the crazy thing is like the Wild have been so good in 5-on-5 and 6-on-5 this year that you look up at it and the power play is 19th at this point, I think. And so you're like, it's not great, but they really haven't had to rely on it all that much with the lines doing their thing. And so would I like to see the numbers improve? Yes. Is it super critical that they do? Probably not. So it'll be worth watching because of the penalty kill, I think. But power play wise, I just look for Kirill and for Fiala to do their thing in normal 5-on-5, which they have done all season.
Yeah, the Blue Jackets are kind of I'm in the same ish kind of boat where I'm like the 5-on-5 has been a problem, so the special teams might as well also be a problem. But yeah, like I said, playing with house money, I'm just excited when we score goals. I will say that if the Wild are down by one, then I would like by the time they pull the goalie, I fully expect them to equalize, because watching the Blue Jackets try and score on an empty net is comical. Like it is a Benny Hill sketch of epic proportions. Watching this team of idiots try to put the puck in the net from like 150 feet away.
Oh boy, the Dallas Stars, they had 2 empty net goals, but I think they took 14 shots at the net with
Yeah,
because
that sounds like Columbus.
the Wild
The
pulled the goalie with I think 9.5 minutes left to play in the third, which love that by
God,
the
I
way.
love that. I'm all about that. The Florida Panthers did the same thing against the Blue Jackets a couple of weeks ago. It was like 8.5 minutes left, and they pulled the goalie. I was like, yes, I
Yeah.
love this. And then I watched them try and score on the empty net for 8.5 minutes. I was like, I don't love this. But
Um, yeah, Dean Evison is, and that's kind of where I was going to go next, coaching wise. Dean Evison is, that meme of the guy looking in the window and it says sickos underneath him and he's laughing. He's like, yes, like that's Dean. Dean is just,
excellent.
I love Dean so much because, and not to say that under Bruce Boudreau or even Mike Yo or any of that, not to say that those guys weren't, but Dean is just so like he's just so refreshingly honest. Like we see coaches so many times in other sports who hide everything. Like they have their little like cue cards that they look at and it has the right answers, but then they're like, I'm not going to tell you what's on the card. Dean is just, he tells it how it is, and he just has such a way of knowing what needs to be done to motivate everybody on the team. Sometimes it requires a player being called out for a bad performance. Sometimes, in the case of this last run where they were 2-8, it requires pointing out things that are going wrong, but trusting the players to do what they need to do to fix it. And he celebrates wins better than any coach in the league. I promise you that. So he is the best, and it's fun to have that coach and GM combo that you feel like can really build something special here in this state, and not like the juggernaut from the last 20 years that they'll grind out a 2-1 win, but you're really gonna have to sweat through 2.5 periods because you get those 2 early goals, and that's it. Like I'm so glad that we've turned to, elite offense, intricate offense, and not like win a game 2-1, and you're sweating bullets the entire final 2 periods.
Yep, the old third period full penalty kill is what I used to think of when Tortorella was in charge. Let's finish off with some prediction fun. I would like the final score of tonight's game, and I would also like the game winner. Who's scoring the game winning goal?
I am going to go 4-3 Wild, because I think on the road, the Wild have been a team that maybe falls behind, but is able to kind of gather themselves and have a good second period. And then in the third period, you're going in just guns blazing. And so I'll say 4-3 Wild, game winning goal for Kevin Fiala as part of a hat trick.
Yeah, that feels emotionally right. The Blue Jackets love to give guys hat tricks. Is there anyone on the Wild that hasn't scored their first career goal yet? The Blue Jackets love to give guys their first career goals.
I don't think he will play, but I would imagine, well, I don't know if he's even on the roster yet still. Mason Shaw, who was with the team over the last handful of days with injuries to Matt Dumba and such, he would have been prime candidate for that. Rem Pitlick, before he was traded, would be prime candidate for that just rando hat trick.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, oh, who hasn't scored a goal in a million years? Like, who was it? We gave Keith Yandel his first goal of the season. We gave when we played the Blackhawks a couple of weeks ago. We gave Ryan Carpenter his first goal of the season in January or February, whenever it was. I'm like, this team, I'm going insane. But I'm gonna go 5-4 Blue Jackets in overtime, because looking at both teams in terms of goals for per game and goals against per game, it looks like there's going to be a lot of goals and not a lot of goaltending. So I'm going to go 5-4 overtime, and it's got to be Patrick Laine in overtime. It's got to be. So I do think that those 4 Wild goals, 3 of them will come from Kevin Fiala, though, because now that you've said that, I'm like, yeah, that just, like, spiritually, that feels right.
Well, and the funny thing, too, is I've been leading this crusade to try to get Kevin Fiala to be the one that's re-signed. It's between Kevin Fiala and Matt Dumba. Like, it feels like one of them is going to be gone in the offseason. And I'm of the belief, like, look at what the offense has done since Fiala and Matt Boldy got put together on the same line. Like, you can't break that up. You just can't. And so if he has a Hattie, he'll be, I think, on pace for like 40 goals this year, which is crazy considering he had 3 heading into December.
Wow.
Who knows? Hockey is the big, beautiful game, from what I've been told. And
it's also nonsense.
Yeah. So we'll see. I hope for Hattie. I'd also love to see a Wild goalie goal at some point.
Yeah, Elvis has been. I think it's going to be. I assume you'll see Elvis on tonight's game. Korpisalo is slated to play tonight / last night, depending on as of time recording this, etc. So I would assume that you're going to see Elvis, but he has been gunning for a goalie goal all season. It's extremely good. It's extremely funny. There's a very good bit last season where the Blue Jackets had the empty net, and he went over and said to John Tortorella, "I'm going to try and score. You can't be mad if I mess up." He's a delight. I love him. Goalie goals always. That's my opinion. But we should probably wrap it up here, and you should tell the fine people of Locked On Blue Jackets where they can find you and your podcast in case they want to catch up with our expansion draft buddies.
Yes, absolutely. You can follow me at Seth Toups on Twitter. That's where I'm most active. I haven't figured out the way to simultaneously tweet off of 2 accounts yet, but we're getting there. And make sure to follow Locked On Wild wherever you listen to podcasts. Also on social media, because we're doing the Locked On Madness tournament. I'm trying to find the best Wild player of all time. Former Blue Jacket Mikko Koivu is just churning right along in the voting.
I believe it. Personally, I'm voting for Marcus Foligno. I don't care if he's eliminated. That's my vote. We
He
love we
he
love Felinos here in Columbus.
yeah, he unfortunately was beaten by Fiala. How about that for a matchup though? Fiala and Foligno.
That's tough. Yeah.
So it's fun. You can find it on our Locked On Wild Twitter account. Voting will resume probably by the time you're listening to this. So make sure to check that out. Make sure to check out Locked On Wild wherever you listen. We'll keep you up to date with everything Minnesota Wild related.
And you can find me over at Jake _ Jacob Foster, JAKOB FORSTER. If you're watching on YouTube, obviously you can see it's right down here because my name is a nightmare to spell. I'm sure you can relate to that. You can find Locked On Blue Jackets wherever you get Locked On Wild. We are on all of your podcast apps of choice. We are now on YouTube, which is very exciting for me personally. I have joined the YouTube train. So make sure you check out Locked On Blue Jackets there. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure you check out Locked On Wild and Locked On Blue Jackets. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.